Mm. All right. So I can see that our audience are joining the session. Hello, everyone. It's so great to have you all here today. And I can see many of you are from different places all around the world. Very, very exciting. So before we start, and before we are still waiting for all of our audience joining, you can simply just share where are you from and what brought you here today. Maybe it's because you simply feel interested in this topic, or is there any special reasons that you would like to be here and to join the discussion? Also, you can also share that when it comes to English classroom, what comes to your mind? Do you think English classroom only can use English, or do you think it's okay to use their native language to support the students? Okay, so I'm here to win. Yes, well, we already have a winner before the debate started. Um, and many teachers are from Vietnam and Thailand. Hello. And from Indonesia, Bangkok, and from Malaysia. Wow. So many of you are from Southeast Asia. Hi. Yes. Great to see some old friends. Okay. Great. Thank you for asking. I hope you have a wonderful day too. All right. So I think um we can start as now it's around 6:02 and maybe we are still waiting for some of them joining, but let's kick off the debate. So again, a warm welcome to everyone from all over the world. My name is Flora, and I'm very glad to be the host for today's session. So I'm the business development manager specializing in academic solution in for Greater China, and I'm excited to be your host for today's session. Last time we discussed the role of AI in language teaching, and today we are debating another important topic, which is this house believes that the classroom should be an English only environment. So, what do you think about this? Because this topic sparks strong opinions. Some teachers believe that English only environments improve immersive and language learning in a more efficient way. However, some people argue that this helps students with by using the native language can add understanding and inclusion. So this is what we are going to dive in today. And let me briefly introduce the agenda of today's debate. So today, before we begin, we are going to ask our audience to vote. So you'll show whether you think that you agree English is the only language that will be used in the classroom, or do you disagree with it? So we will go through a vote first. And second, we are going to invite our first speakers. So Will from the red team and Super from the blue. And next, we will invite Dale from the red team and Nathan from the blue team for the second Saval. So let me briefly introduce our debaters for today's session. And let's have a warm welcome to our defending the motions on the red team. So we have Dale Spafford, the Regional Professional Development Manager for Asia. Hello, Dale. So
Hello, welcome
would you like
everybody.
to, yeah, would you like to briefly share why you think English only classroom is important?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to present some arguments in the session, of course, but yeah, I think it's particularly in our region where we don't have much English outside of the classroom. I think it's key to have as much English inside the classroom as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome
Okay,
everybody. Anyway, thanks for coming.
thank you. Thank you so much, Dale. And let's welcome Will Rickson. So joining Dale is Will Rickson. He's the Global Academic Engagement and Content Manager at Macmillan Education. So hello, Will. What's your view on the benefits of this approach?
Hi, Flora. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Yeah, I mean that's yeah, same with Dell. I'll go into mine in a minute. But generally, I think sort of immersing yourself in a language where you sort of have to get relatively complex messages across um, to be fluent in that environment. I think you need to practice in that environment.
Okay, thank you so much, Will. And next, we have the opposing motion on the blue team. We have Nathan Willer. So Nathan joined us from Dubai, and he's the lead trainer for Macmillan here. Hello, Nathan. Welcome. And
Hi,
would you
good.
like to say hi and tell us why do you think including native language in the classroom is helpful?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks for inviting me again to another wonderful debate. It's really great to be here, joining you from sunny Dubai. And yeah, we are going to be arguing today that it's essential, really, to include some of the students L1 in the classroom. We're going to be looking at it from a variety of perspectives, but mostly to make sure that the classroom is as humanistic and supportive to students as possible.
Okay, thank you so much. And joining Nathan, we have Super. Super based in Shanghai, and she's the senior trainer and academic consultant. Hello, Super. So, what's your
Hi.
perspective on this?
Yes, thank you very much, Flora. I believe like using some of the L1 in the classroom is essential. And from my personal experience as a foreigner learning English for more than 30 years, yeah, I have a lot of things to share, especially based on the context of Asia. We have a lot of common ground here. So can't wait to yeah, argue.
Can't wait to argue. Okay,
Fight,
fire
fight.
up.
Can't wait to fight.
Okay, yes. Thank you so much to our debaters. And as I just shared with you the agenda, first we are going to do the first round voting. And at the end of the debate, we will do the second round voting and see whether you have changed your mind because you have been persuaded by our debaters. So let's start our vote for this. This house believed that the classroom should be an English-only environment. Now I will launch the vote, so you can just share yes if you agree or no if you disagree. I will give you about 1 to 2 minutes to share your ideas. Wow. Okay. I will say it's almost a tie. Um, about yes, it's almost a tie. Many of you believe that we should use in like English for the only language at the classroom. And some believe that we should still support students with their native language. Oh, okay.
Going.
I think we
Mhm.
have our
Still
work cut
ongoing.
out, Will.
Easy peasy,
Okay.
Dell. Easy peasy.
All right. All right. So I think we are finished. Anyone wants to vote? So I think we are done here. So let me briefly share the result. So we have about 38% of the audience believe that we should only use English in the classroom. And about 63% of the audience believe that we should use native language to support our students. Okay, so now please remember this result and I will reveal the second round result later. Okay, let me do a quick screenshot. Okay, so let's move on and let's welcome our first Saval. So for the first round, we will have Will, right, for our first speakers.
Hmm.
Okay, so Will, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Flora. Yeah.
Okay, so hold on because I need the timer. So everyone, you have 5 minutes to share your arguments, and then we'll move on to the next person. Okay, the next team. All right. So ready? Let's go.
Has it started? Yes, I can see it. Okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So I do believe that the classroom should be an English only environment. And I've got four different reasons I'd like to go into as to why to persuade the lovely audience to agree with me. So firstly, my first point is talking about the expectations of students and parents in Asia specifically. I can't speak for the whole world, but I do know that in Asia, predominantly, the students and especially the parents of young learners want their little ones to go into a room, into a space where they've got to use English. And not only the English that they're using in that environment, but the transactional and non-transactional English that they need to do certain things in that space. If they need to borrow something from a friend, isn't it good practice for them to learn how to do that rather than going to reverting to their L1 to do that? That's a very small example of what I'm trying to say here, is that in that environment, parents want that to be the case, that their student is at least a few times a week, they're in a space where they've got to use English to do whatever they want to do in that particular space, and not just the target language. Surveys in China show that over 80% of parents prefer immersive English teaching for their children. So it's important for parents and also for the young learners, teen learners, and adult learners. They expect that to be the case. They want to go into a classroom to learn English, and they expect it to be English, according to surveys.
Mm-hmm.
My second point is preparing learners for English medium education. So not just English medium education, but preparing learners for English medium for communication. So English only classrooms mimic environments in higher education, for example, or in work, where they will need to learn and converse, communicate, study, read, listen in English. Also, they'll need to have critical opinion. They'll have critical analysis of many different things when they're at university. When they're reading texts, they've got to analyze texts and evaluate them, and they've got to do that in English. And I think if they've gone up to their university level, for example, tertiary education, and they've had primary and secondary education in sort of half English, half L1, there's going to be so many different things, going to be so many things that they don't have experience in, and it's sort of like jumping into the deep end stuff. And that's not really the right time, in my opinion, to be jumping in at the deep end when you're going to university. You need to be as equipped as you possibly can to excel in that field. And also when you're going to work, if you don't go to university, or if you go to work very soon after university and you haven't really been in an English speaking environment before, but you want to work on the international stage, it's going to be very difficult for you at the beginning to start getting that language up to scratch, to actually communicate for real, which, as we all know, is very different to the language that we're taught via the curriculum. The third thing is creating a safe space to practice. So kind of this does helm back to that second point I just made. But if you get to tertiary education or work and you haven't been in a space where you can make mistakes and you're not going to get looks, or you're not going to get anyone judging you, I'm not saying that they will all judge you in tertiary education and in work, but if your English is not up to scratch in those scenarios, it will be more difficult for you. So an English speaking environment is creating a safe space for them to make those mistakes and to face the anxiety that they will face in a controlled environment, rather than when they go to work or university where they've got to speak English and they're making mistakes and they didn't really know that they're making mistakes, or they get heavily anxious at that part of their life because they haven't had that exposure to a fully fluent English environment. My last point is boosting standardized test performance. So a lot of exams that they take, TOEFL, IELTS, the Cambridge Suite, they are required. They're basically in a completely English environment. So if they are doing the speaking exam, for example, there are tips and tricks, lots of very useful ones as well, to do well in the IELTS speaking exam, for example. But if they want to excel past a particular level in IELTS, it's going to be very difficult to do that if you're learning purely via target language, and you're not really giving yourself that opportunity to use English for non-transactional purposes so that you can really excel in standardized tests. That's the end of my arguments. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Thank you so much, Will, for sharing your point. And just a quick reminder that our audience that we open the floor for the Q&A session. So everyone in this room are welcome to share your questions and assign these questions to the debaters. And we will have this Q&A session at the end of this debate. So welcome to share your questions. So thank you, Will, for sharing your ideas. And next, we'll invite Super to share her arguments. So Super, are you ready?
Yes. Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, let's go.
Thank you, Will. And I can see some of our audience is already on our side. Thank you, Guy and Bond, for raising, great opinions aligning with my arguments, which I'm going to say. So good evening, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, maybe. Yeah. So today I am here to debate whether English classroom should be English only or not. So I stand firmly against this motion. And I know some of the parents' expectations are 100% English, but we know it's not the most realistic and effective way. Because while I agree that English should be practiced as much as possible in the classroom, enforcing an English-only policy in the classroom is probably not the way to get that goal, to achieve that goal. On the other hand, like integrating some L1 use could be helpful and be much more encouraging for the students and teachers to achieve that English learning goal. So let me explain why. So let's maybe start by imagining the first imagine a classroom in Asia, with around maybe 40 to 50, even more students in the classroom with like a beginner level of students. So they are all like maybe 9 to 10 years old students who just started learning English. And there is an English teacher who's trying to explain a pair work activity to the students. And the teacher spent like around 10 minutes explaining the rules, explaining the roles, explaining how the students should be doing that pair work activity. However, the students could still be a little bit lost or a little bit struggling about what to do. But the teacher insisted English only, so the students are too afraid of asking questions in English or trying to figure out how to do the activity, by asking questions in English. So the students could be, doing the activity not knowing what to do, and the effectiveness of these pair work activity could be lost. And what makes the things worse is usually we will have a very mixed ability like classrooms in Asia. We will have students who have taken maybe outside classroom like English tutorings, outside school, so they might understand some of the instructions. But we have also a lot of students who have like a minimum like exposure to English at home or outside of the classroom, so they don't really have the ability to understand the teacher's instructions. So the result could be some of the students gradually feeling lost, and then they're not like feeling engaged in the classroom, and also they will lose interest, not willing to participate. But some of the students might dominate the classroom using English only, and also take like the whole like job for them, and making the classroom not that inclusive, not that like mixed level for all students' proficiency levels. And lastly, also thinking about the culture in Asia. Some of you might have experienced teaching in Asia. We know the culture in the classroom didn't really encourage students to speak up. We expect our students to be actively like participate in English speaking activities using English only, but the reality is a lot of students will feel intimidated, especially at the beginning level. They don't feel comfortable speaking English. They will lose confidence, and they will feel like isolated from the group, like higher level group of students, and then moving on to discouraged and frustration, and that is really the opposite from what we want to see as an English only environment. We want students to be we want to be tolerant to different levels of students. We want to be encouraging and also motivating the students to use English. So a strategic use of L1 can really like balance that kind of problem. So we use L1 to explain some of the instructions. We use L1 to tell the students to meet their emotional needs, sometimes if they're not confident. And we also use L1 to meet mixed level students' levels. So that's why I believe using certain level of L1 in the classroom could be really, really helpful for boosting students' confidence. So that is my argument. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, super. Okay, so thank you, Super and Will, for the first round debate. It's really they all share really good insight and perspective, because I can see from the chat box many teachers are sharing their own experiences, and it feels like it's so real. So like what Will just said, you provide a safe environment for the student to build up their confidence in the real world scenario, because you cannot expect them to be prepared after they enter the society and to be exposed to the real world immersive English environments. However, she mentioned about that we shouldn't frustrate students at the very beginning. Think about that when they are beginners and they started to feel frustrated or even feel stressful to speak up in the English classroom. They can't even build their confidence at all, right? So there are two different perspectives from each team. So really, really good sharing. Thank you so much. And next, so let's invite our next Saval from, let's start with Team Red, right? So we will have Dale from Team Red. All right, so Dale, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah, just to talk about to what Super had mentioned there. I think a lot of the things she mentioned are very valid, but a lot of them are actually teaching skills, not really not really arguing against the language that's used in the classroom. And if you change that to a monolingual class, then fine. But as soon as you add another nationality to the classroom, then the inclusivity goes out the window. So you need to then use the language of every student in the classroom. So I would argue against the teaching practice and argue against teacher training to help teachers use English in the correct way and model instructions rather than using the first language. Which comes to my first point about maximizing exposure to English in the classroom. So I did a little bit of research how many hours a week a student practices English or learns English in Asia. And on average, they study English for between 2 to 5 hours a week across primary, secondary, and university. And then if we average this out across the whole week, that is 2.1% of their awake time they have studying English. If that is then reduced because a teacher is speaking their first language in the classroom, then I think we're not giving students much opportunity or exposure to English at all. I think there are lots of techniques that teachers can use to counteract the classroom management issues that come. And I don't think teachers should really should fall back onto that crutch of using their first language to counteract these deficiencies that they may see in their teaching practices. I also think that when a teacher speaks English in a classroom, particularly if their first language is the same as the learners, so a Vietnamese teacher speaking English to a Vietnamese group of students, provides a really good example of what the students can aspire to. It shows them that they've gone through this process of learning English and they've got to this level that they can actually teach the language, and that is something that they can do too if they are prepared to use English. Once the teacher then starts to use Vietnamese, for example, in this example, then it shows that they are okay. Now I can use Vietnamese, and I don't need to work as hard on my English, and therefore it kind of it affects their learning. This kind of role model approach is also affects the teacher. So maybe the teacher needs to really build their proficiency. I've said about building their proficiency in teaching skills, but also building their their L2 skills if their L1 isn't English. So they then need to develop their English skills as well, and are constantly learning and developing at the same time as their learners. So we have this really nice environment where everybody's learning together. They're also able, as Will mentioned, with using transactional language, about helping students to use English in more authentic situations that they're then able to hopefully take outside the classroom, and then also increase that percentage of English that they're getting inside the classroom through the week. I think that in order to learn a language, it's great if you can get to a stage where you think in that language. And this is a challenge, but without actually having some kind of immersion, you're just going to be relying on translation for most of the time. And translation programs are getting better. We talked about AI previously, and these are becoming much faster and much easier. But still, I think the real goal and desire is to be able to communicate effectively in another language. And without exposure to that, without constant exposure to that, then that's going to be more challenging. And that then reliance on translation is going to be more and more, which is really going to affect people's ability to communicate effectively. And these communication skills are so important. Using English as a medium for education, which was mentioned earlier by Will, is also part of the future of English. It's only going to become more prominent across the world, definitely across Asia. So having students exposed to English in the English, and remember, we're talking about English language classrooms, right? So students who are studying English should only be receiving English. When they go to study other subjects in English, then it becomes a bit more easier. And that's my argument.
Okay, thank you so much, Dale. I noticed that Team Red use a lot of data. They are like data-driven team. They use data to prove their statements. Okay, and now next, let's welcome Nathan. Nathan, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, we've had some, I think, wonderful arguments from the red team. Dell was almost leaning me into it there a little bit. I was being drawn along by his data statistics. And I can see this argument of maximizing exposure, getting them to the point of fluency. But I think if we think about the real world, if we think about students going into classrooms, the reality for most of those students is that we can talk about percentages, but for me, 0 is still 0. If they're not getting anything, they're not getting anything. Like they're never going to get to that point where they're thinking. So I want to lean into this more kind of this development of a humanistic classroom that I think there's been a lot of work that's been done. Before I do that, I'm going to add a little bit to what Super was saying around, she was talking about things like instructions and helping mixed ability classes. And I totally agree with this idea that if L1 can help students to achieve your objectives for that class, then and help you save time and get them to the end goal, which is using a particular language point in the correct way, whether it's practicing, whether it's learning something new, then I totally agree that L1 should be used in that particular circumstance. It can be used for things like grammar. If we think about the majority of English language learners, they're probably young learners. Grammar is extremely abstract. It's very difficult for students. Yes, we can make it visual, but sometimes it requires something more. How many classes? I mean, I used to teach a long time ago. How many times have I spent hours trying to teach them a grammar point that perhaps with their own language they could have grasped quite quickly, and we could have just moved on and got them into the position where they were able to practice it. And that can be said for other things than just grammar. Are they able to brainstorm? Does that help them to collaborate? Can they have discussions and then bring that back and use English to build on that? I think there's lots of opportunities that we can use to get them to use L1 to support what it is that we're trying to get them to achieve in the classroom. I think that if we do have an English-only classroom, the tendency, and again, I've seen this in schools that I've worked in, is that classrooms become very authoritarian. Yeah, we suck the fun out of the classroom. It becomes this tense and uninviting place for students to attend. And that's not what we want. And often it's not what the teacher intended in the first place, but it ends up becoming very artificial, and students kind of dread going in. They have a lot of fear. We're always talking about this anxiety of using English in the future, but actually I think it creates that anxiety within the classroom itself. And lots of students will create tactics to hide their true feelings or their true abilities. And we see that a lot in that development of inclusion as well. But the last point I want to make in my last 2 minutes is this idea of social and emotional learning, behavioral issues, things that go on in the classroom, and this new importance that we're giving to well-being. So if you think about it, building rapport with students is incredibly important. But relationships and the way we develop relationships are bound within cultural identities. So your L1 is naturally a part of that. So to build rapport, you're going to need L1 to do that, I believe. You can't just do that in an L2 setting. And I think another aspect that we often overlook is this idea of cognitive overload. And we think of cognitive overload in terms of tasks quite often. We don't want to give them tasks that overload them, getting them, things like stand up and read out in class is speaking and reading at the same time, and actually dealing with confidence and all of these things. But cognitive overload is also important when you think about how exhausting it is to do something in a language that's not yours. So students go to school all day. If they're forced to do something in English, it's exhausting for them. And I learned this actually in my own life because my wife doesn't speak English as her first language. So when let's say she visits the UK with me, spends time with my family, I see how exhausted she is by doing everything in English only. And I'm now feeling that when I go to Colombia and I do everything in Spanish only. It's exhausting. You get to the end of the day and you don't realize just how tiring that is. And if we relate that to the classroom, I think it's exhausting for our students as well. Your English class might be at the end of the day, so they're already tired, especially if they're in an EMI setting where they're doing everything in English. Or even if they're an adult student, it's just that extra, if we can be supportive and if we can allow them a little bit to take the pressure off of them in terms of what we're asking them to do and forcing them to use English all the time, I think that we can get some higher achievement out of our students.
Okay, thank you so much, Nathan, for your statement. So, from Dill's perspective, he also mentioned about teachers' teaching skills and teacher development, right? If we focus more on immersive English learning environment, this also can help teachers to become to be more mindful with their language learning skills and language teaching skills. And also he mentioned about, I think, something related to the train of thought. Sometimes when you are not in an immersive environment, you can really build this train of thought. If you are like jumping in and out in using English or using your switch to your native language again. However, Nathan, you mentioned a very good point about this cognitive overload. This is the first time I heard these terms, and I really think that it makes sense because there are so many things that students need to focus on. But if there are too many distractions, they can't really focus on their English learning's progress, right? So this could be a problem. All right. So now let's move on to our next round, another exciting round. So for this round, each team, you've got these opportunities to respond to the other evidence debaters within 1 minute. So you have 1 minute to prove your ideas or to respond to your opponent. Okay, and we'll start with Well. Okay, Well, Super, Dale, and Nathan will go in this round. So, Well, are you ready
I'm ready.
for your 1 minute? Okay, let's go.
Thanks. Okay, so just to respond to Super and Nathan. So to help overcome stress and expressing or asking in L2, if they're allowed to revert to L1 whenever they're feeling stressed, how is that going to help them when in real life it will be stressful? And if they're not going to try and do it if they can't do it with their teacher because it gets too stressful, how are they going to do it with a lecturer in an English-speaking university? 2, with practice and teach. So the 10 minutes for setting up an activity, there are many techniques, as we all know, that it does not take 10 minutes to set up an activity in English. And the more you do that with students, at first, yes, a slow road, but very quickly, they're going to get how the teacher does these things by using their body language, by using simple language as well, if it's lower level learners. Doesn't need to take 10 minutes. Tricky at first, but then very quickly they're going to start getting used to this whole English being used for everything, and they will get those skills in their mind, and they will develop those skills very quickly to compensate. I have 4 more points. Can I make those as well?
You can leave it to the Q&A part.
Yeah.
And you use this statement to answer the questions. Okay, thank you so much, Will. And next we will invite Super. Super, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I do believe like it's not practical or not like friendly for teachers and students, especially like in Asia, to enforce like English only policy, because yeah, we have very limited time in the classroom. We have a lot of goals to achieve, so the use of L1 can definitely help with that. But I agree that sometimes the teachers will be concerned about losing control over students' use of L1. Yeah, the L2 is not practiced enough. So I think there is a very strategic like way. For example, we can allow students to have coupons of using L1 in the classroom. So they will be allowed, for example, like 3 times per class to use L1 when it's necessary. Yeah, it helps the students to ease the difficulty of speaking up, to use the L2, yeah, to clarify with the teacher about the instructions, and also, yeah, to make the English learning better.
Thank
1
you.
minute
Thank you,
goes
Super.
quickly.
Yes, goes really quickly. But thank you for sharing your point clearly within this 1 minute. And next, let's invite Dale. Hi, Dale. Ready?
Yeah. I still think most of the arguments that have been put against it are talking about classroom management issues, and while they're definitely important to discuss, I still think we can manage the classroom by using L1. It takes some training, it takes some skills, but it takes some hard work. But once that's done, I think you can manage those issues quite effectively. I do agree with the cognitive load argument that Nathan came up with. I thought that was quite interesting. However, aren't students supposed to be sort of learning while they're at school? Aren't they supposed to at some point, feel that cognitive load and embrace that? I think it's up to the teacher to manage activities and things that they're doing to manage that cognitive load. I don't think the language itself needs to change in order to help manage that cognitive load. So that's just an aspect of studying. Students have to study hard and get used to it. And I've run out of time.
Okay,
this 1
thank
minute
you.
bit is awful. It's not enough.
Yeah, there are so many things to say, right? But only 1 minute. Okay, thank you so much, Dale, for sharing your point. And last but not least, we have Nathan. Nathan, are you ready?
Sure.
Okay.
Minute starts. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I can kind of see the point of the opposing team, that they want to kind of create this environment that mimics what they feel like English should be used like in the real world. But I'm going to argue actually that I don't think the real world is like that. I think that we have a lot of students that they go through school, they go through university, and they've been in this English only environment, and they feel like they know English. They feel like they can speak English. And then, they go off to the UK and they realize that accents are different. The language usage is completely different, and they get kind of lost, and they feel like all of a sudden, I don't know anything. Actually, what have I been doing for 12 years? I don't know anything. So I think actually L2 speakers, I think it's been shown actually that L2 speakers interact mostly with other L2 speakers in the real world. So they're going to use a variety of languages in everyday interactions. So that's fine.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nathan, for your clear and concise summary. So for the next round, I believe many of you have different ideas, because I can see the discussion still ongoing, and your statements elicit a lot of discussions, and maybe some of you started to share your questions in the chat box. However, we have some questions in this Q&A tab. I would like each team to assign one person to answer the questions. So for the first question, it's a little bit long, and I try to make it short. He mentioned about culturally responsive teaching, which is also called CRT. So the questions goes like this. Would you prefer a strict English only policy in the classroom, even if it might discourage participation? Or would you explore more creative approaches like culturally responsive teaching to make learning more engaging and inclusive? And I think maybe we can invite the red team to answer this question. So
Where
in
is
the
that,
red team,
Flora?
we have
Sorry, I can't see that question.
In
Where
the
is that?
Q&A
oh,
tab.
it's in the
Q&A.
Q&A
I'm looking in the
tab.
Q&A.
Q&A
Where
tab.
is that?
Joe, Mary,
First, the
Evelyn,
first question.
open.
Joe Mary.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So who would like to answer this question?
So we're
Well,
the
or
blue team, right?
Yeah.
yes, you are the blue
I'm just
team.
sorry, Flora. While you're reading it, I was trying to find it. I'm just going to read it now quickly. Sorry, Dale. If you go ahead,
Okay.
Dale, if you want to start.
Yeah, so I mean,
Okay.
I would just add that I think again, going back to my point about training teachers, I think this is probably I'm sorry that you were silent for most of the time in your class, but I think that's kind of the teacher needs to recognize that and try to implement strategies that help everybody in the class, the weakest student to the strongest student. So you want to be obviously making sure that everybody's included, and if somebody is silent, then you can take them aside and maybe find out why. There's other reasons why they might be silent. It might not just be the lack of English.
Yeah. Can I just say one point onto that as well, Del?
Yeah.
I think if that person, so Joe, Mary, just to take you as an example, if in that particular instance you were being, quiet or silent, I think there's nothing better to help you build confidence from relatively, maybe I'm assuming this is confidence, I am, but maybe I'm wrong, but I'm assuming it's a confidence thing. How are you actually going to be when you get exposed to a fully English speaking environment where they take no prisoners, they are just all speaking fluently in English, and imagine you had no experience of that whatsoever. I think you're just going to be starting on a lower level than you would have done had you not been exposed to an English only environment in school.
And just one more to add to that as well. If a teacher then is going to use your L1, it's kind of admitting defeat. I think the confidence will get lower because you're just saying, well, you obviously don't know English, you can't speak English, so I'm going to have to speak your L1, and let's just go from there.
I think maybe an
May I
L1 chat
build on-
outside the classroom, an L1 chat to sort of try and get to the bottom of it, I wouldn't oppose. And I don't think that's what we're saying in the classroom here. I would say outside of the classroom, if it's something, emotional happening, then I think an L1 conversation is probably necessary.
Absolutely.
Outside.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And Super, anything to add on?
Yeah, I think the result of being like silence is very highly likely related to the impose of English only policy in the classroom. So being like inclusive, being like encouraging, don't intimidate the students is definitely the solution is to having a bonding with the students using the L1, gradually making the students feel comfortable and safe to speak not only like in English, but also in their native language to express themselves. Making them feel comfortable until they want to, use more like English in the classroom. That would be more productive. So I think imposing like the English only policy could be counterproductive in this aspect. So I don't think, imposing only is the most effective way. Definitely not, that rigid.
I think the word
okay.
imposing is sort of it's coloring this point. The word imposition. It's not like this devil that's sort of looming over the classroom, this big red creature.
No,
so it's just a rule, just like no using of smartphones in class. It's just a rule like any other.
Yeah.
Not a big monster.
It's like you'd expect to learn maths in a maths class, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't impose maths upon you in a maths.
Stop imposing maths upon me. Get off me, man.
Okay. So we still have one more question, and I think this question we can start from the blue team for Nathan and Super to answer first. So the question is, do you think it is beneficial to compare grammar points in both L1 and English to help learners make connection between the two languages and see the similarities and differences? So maybe Nathan, would you like to share your point first for this question?
Sure. I mean, the short answer is yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got to remember that the majority of our students are not just studying English, they're studying so many things. So this idea of having clear, rich classrooms, bringing in other topics, looking at things like sustainability, all of those connections help our students to learn in a variety of ways. And learning is not, I think we need to get out of the idea that English is just like learning all these little pieces, and then we put them together and we know English. I think I want to say it's been shown now that's not true. Will, it's been shown.
It's been shown. Oh,
It's been shown that
you must be right then if it's been shown.
Yeah.
It's been shown. I can't believe it.
It's been shown.
I didn't know it's been shown.
But yeah, we take what we already know and we build upon that continuously. And so I think if they know a particular grammar point, or if there's a similarity or a difference between their L1, then highlighting that helps them to build those neural connections, I think. So I see it as a positive thing.
Yeah,
So yeah, we can definitely use that one.
there's actually like researches about L1 influence, like
What research is it, Super?
Can you
first language
Yeah,
influence
in
on
research.
second language acquisition. So it
Throw
is
a name in
about,
there.
yeah,
Throw a
your
name.
native
No
speaker,
name, no
your
dates.
native
Harder and
language.
Lightbound?
This is a real serious research.
I heard
And it
Scott
has
Thornbury
been
say
shown that, yeah, knowing the language, like the first language grammar difference or similarities comparing with the second language acquisition could be helpful. And it has a very strong influence on the learners, like learning a second language. So by explaining these differences and similarities will definitely help the students to overcome these cognitive overload, and help them to master certain grammar points really quick, and also maybe correct some of their grammatical like usage, maybe influenced by their first language quickly as well. Because I have benefited from that as very much, yeah, when I learned the English language.
Okay,
So
can I
that
add something to that?
yeah.
Can I add something to that, Super? Because
Yeah.
I think that I want to add that I think what I would like to see, or what I do like to see in an English language classroom, is teachers and students being playful with the language, is having that playful approach. So, and this relates to this idea of how is it similar? How is it different? What can you do with it, with the language? And you were saying about maths, and if you look at the teaching of maths, actually those types of things are in the teaching of maths. How do you play around with this? How do you experiment with it? And we can do that with language as well. It's not just here's a grammar point that you need to remember. Like, how is it different? How would you use it if you was to use this grammar point, which doesn't exist in Arabic, for example? What would happen if you put it in? And it would be crazy, but it will make us laugh. But that's part of their learning process, I think.
Can I just respond to that? About the, I agree. I agree that comparing your L1 grammar to English grammar, I think that does help cognitively. I can see. I don't know the research. Clearly, you do, but I'd like to be able to read it. Can you just send me the reference for your quotes just then, for your references? That'd be great. But I don't think that needs to be done in L1. You can refer to a grammar structure in your L1 without reverting to speaking entirely in your L1. I think you can still access that part of their brain that you and I agree with trying to compare those two languages together. That can all be done in English. In fact, if that is done in English, that's further compounding opportunities to practice getting complex messages across in a language that you're trying to learn, rather than, if it gets too complicated, just use the L1.
Okay, just a quick reminder to our audience. Now we already launched the vote 2. So while you're still listening to our debaters sharing their ideas, you feel free to share your agreements by voting. Okay, so Nathan, please continue.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say, I think that's probably true for some students, but I think for most students, they would probably struggle with it. So things like brainstorming and being able to discuss and collaborative learning, I think quite a lot of that probably could be done in, as long as it leads them to the objective of using the English.
It's just if they're doing a project, I think for me, the learning in a project is that you're collaborating with people in English. You're getting across thousands of little ideas in English. And I think if you're doing most of that in your L1 and you're using the target language like bucket and spade and beach and sand, that is the only language you're using in L2. That's the only language you're going to learn.
All right.
Super.
So
Hit him.
while the
Hey.
discussion is still ongoing,
Okay,
Yes.
Can't hear you. What did you say?
Never ending
I'm-
debate.
yeah, never-ending debate.
Never end. Could be
Yes,
never
so
ending. Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
leave like 30 more seconds for our audience to vote. So now, the result, because previously we have 32 participants who vote, and now we also have 32 participants that already share their votes in this poll. So we're still left for about another 10 seconds and to see the result.
Starting to
Okay.
celebrate.
There's still lots of people not voted yet. Though. There's lots of people not voted.
Yes, because maybe some audience they joined earlier, but they already left, and maybe we have some new joiner who just
Yeah.
just jump into this session. So I would say the result is quite close to the previous result.
You're being very kind.
All right.
It was
So we are
close to
going
the previous result, though, wasn't it? What was the previous result, Fiona?
Yeah.
30
So I will
Flora?
just share.
Flora.
Yeah. So the percentage. So we have 38%, which is about 12 votes of our audience agree that English is the only language we should use in the classroom, while we have 63%, which is about 22 people who disagree this approach. And now, okay, so I'm ready to end the result, and I will share this result with you. So now we have 29% of voters who goes for yes, we should use English, and 71% of them disagree. So the votes.
And we have one more in the chat disagrees.
One more. Are you sure? Are you sure the teacher didn't vote? So yeah, although the
I didn't count the
percentage
ones in the
is-
chat box from earlier.
Yeah, that's really.
Did you count those from earlier as well, or just this one?
I'm not sure. Okay, I'm not sure whether the teacher voted or not. But you see the numbers, the
Mm.
votes is still quite close. But obviously, most teachers still disagree that using English for the only language in this English class. All right. So
Well, I
what
think the
a
Blues
fun
have won the
debate.
swing states. I think it's fair to say, isn't it? You won the swing states.
Yeah.
That's it.
Congratulations, Blue Team. Great job.
Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you very
Great job.
much.
Yes, and thank you so
Oh,
much.
Fru didn't vote.
for-
Hold on. Someone called Fru didn't vote.
Yeah, she did. She voted in the chat. Yeah. So
No, she didn't.
I was.
Okay,
All
so
right.
one more
What's now?
vote.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
All right. So any final thoughts to share?
I've got a final thought just to say thank you so much to Super Nathan, Will, yourself, Flora, Dolores, and Palin backstage for making this a really fun and useful event for me. And hopefully you've all enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed participating in it. And thank you to you all for your support this year. We've had a great year, I think, of events. We've got more to come in 2025, so stay tuned for more and better in 2025. So thank you all once again.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Thank you
Del.
so
Thanks
much.
for the invite. Had a great time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Really
and
interesting.
thank you for the ideas from teachers in the chat box. I think there's a lot of great like references we can take. And
Yes.
I think, yeah, Bond said like 90%, 10% is a good like ratio for using different languages in the classroom, L1 and L2. So yeah, I think, yeah, we can definitely benefit from talking to each other and talking to teachers during these debates. And thank you very much for Del for coming up with these wonderful series, and Nathan and Will for contributing your brilliant ideas. Nice talking to you.
Yes.
You
Nice
too,
sharing
Super.
different ideas from a different perspective, and especially like what Super said, teachers, your suggestions and your inputs, we will definitely yes, take them into account for our future trainings. So thank you so much, and let's call it a day. Take care, and I hope you all enjoy these wonderful seasons. All right, so see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.